Morning everyone, it's Adam Small. Welcome to the Heli Hut. It's May 2nd, 2026. I'm super excited because last night I received an OMP M2 V3 Sport, and it's not going to be for me. It's going to be for my son. He's a good RC airplane pilot, and he's been flying my M2 V3 Pro, which I've had pretty much since it was released. And I'm not a big fan of micros, but these things are terrific. So right now, I do have several OMP models, and I'm very impressed. I got the M7R. There's my M2 V3 Pro. I fly all my models off of FrSky radios using the ETHOS-based operating system. M5 I love, and then this is the goodie box that came yesterday. So this is going to go to my son so he can fly helicopters more, which I'm super pleased about. This is the pink M2 V3 Sport. I'll do a quick unboxing, and then this video is basically going to go over how to get this M2 V3 Pro updated, get the Bluetooth module updated, get the OFS3 updated to the latest firmware, and then programming the ETHOS FrSky radio from beginning to end. I hope you enjoy. Okay, here's the M2 V3 Sport. Nice packaging. It comes in a nice styrofoam case to actually transport your model to and from the field, or if you just want to keep it in the back of your vehicle, and if you have a spare moment to fly on your way home from work, on your way to work, it's a nice little travel case, easy to open. And then inside you'll find the model itself. It's pre-built. I'll put that off to the side. Instruction manual. I find the instruction manual that Jonas created and his colleagues very, very thorough. It's very, very thorough. It comes with one battery. It's a 750 milliamp 3S OMPHOBBY battery. I've been beating these up, charging them at 3C on my M2 V3 Pro, and they're not puffing at all. And I probably have maybe 50 cycles each on 3 batteries. Spare parts bag. We have a zip ties and some servo arms and ball links. Oh, and then we have some cables. And this is the Bluetooth module that we're going to plug into the OFS3 unit. The OFS3 unit is the brains of the M2 and the M1 now. And then this little cable here, which we're actually going to use this connector here. It's a JST-XH. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Okay, the items you'll need today to get your M2 or M1 Pro setup, or the M2 Sport. This is the little cable that came in the kit in a little baggie. We're going to use this connector. Here's the Bluetooth module. You'll need this. You'll have to purchase this extra. This is the FrSky Archer Plus RS Mini 2.4 gigahertz receiver. And there's different vendors that sell this. I'll have basically the make and model of this receiver in the description, and then you can choose whatever hobby store you'd like to order it from. I know for a fact that A-Main Hobby sells them, and that's where I got this one. So we'll just open up this package here and tell you what you need. This squid type cable we don't need, so I'm just going to toss this aside. Here's the RS2 Mini receiver. It's pretty slick. This is the same receiver I have on my M2 V3 Pro. We got several cables coming out. This blue cable, we're going to de-pin it from this connector here in a little bit, okay? But it has an integrated antenna, and here's the bind button there. It's pretty slick, and we're going to get full telemetry if you follow the instructions in my video. And then, of course, eventually we're going to need to use the battery when we register and bind this receiver and do this setup. Okay, first things first, go ahead and turn on your ETHOS-based radio, your FrSky radio, and plug it into your computer, and then open up the ETHOS suite. You probably want to make sure you're on the most up-to-date ETHOS suite, because they do update it every once in a while with better functionality. Once you plug in the USB cord and your transmitter's on, we're going to select ETHOS suite. Okay, now we don't need to look at the transmitter anymore, and we'll just look at the computer here. It just opened up some files. We'll just go ahead and minimize those. And let's see, we want to go to radio information. So click on radio information, and you want to make sure your firmware is up to date, the bootloader is up to date, and your module version is up to date. If it isn't up to date, then you probably want to back up the radio and then write outdated scripts and then flash outdated components to update your radio. With the latest OFS3 firmware, they say you need to be on ETHOS 1.6.2 or greater. So I'm on 1.6.6, and this is as of May 2nd. Okay, so now we need to download firmware onto our transmitter. The RS Mini probably has an updated firmware version that isn't on RS Mini you got from the store. Mine's quite outdated. So what we need to do is go to Download Center, turn off your transmitter, and so my transmitter's off, and we're gonna open it up in bootloader mode. So I'm gonna push and hold this center button here on the thumb wheel and the power button at the same time. And you can see there I'm in bootloader. And then I'm gonna plug the USB cord from the transmitter back into the computer. And it should open up a couple files. You can see two files open up, Radio E and then Radio D. In the Radio D file, you should have a file or a folder titled Firmware. If you don't, then add a new folder and rename it Firmware. Okay, so this is where I put all the firmware in for all the various receivers I have on my RC aircraft. Okay, so now we have that folder set up, Firmware. We're gonna go back to the ETHOS Suite Download Center, click on that, and we're gonna go to Receivers. And I'm gonna go to Access 2.4G series. It's an Archer Plus receiver, so I'm clicking on that. And it's an Archer Plus RS Mini. So I'm gonna click on that. And you can see over here, the most current version is 3.0.1. Now I've tried flashing this firmware automatically by hitting this flash button, and a lot of times I'll get an error. So I think it's just much easier to download the folder. So I'm just gonna download it onto my desktop. Asset has been downloaded successfully, and I'll just click OK. Now if I go back to my desktop, let's see if I can find that folder. Here it is, 3.0.1 APRX. It's a zip file, so I'm going to double click on it. Okay, here's the zip folder, and I'm going to go to RS Mini folder. This is the firmware we need, so I'm going to copy it. And then I'm going to paste it in the firmware folder on my flash drive D on my radio. So now we have the most current version of the firmware for our receiver, and we're going to update the firmware on that receiver in a later step. Stay in bootloader mode for now because we're about to download a Lua script from Rob Thompson's GitHub website, so stand by. The next thing I highly recommend is you want to go to github.com and go to Rob Thompson's page. This guy is the man. He is the guru as far as getting ETHOS set up with rotor flight, or he created this OFS3 dashboard. So we're going to install that onto our radio, and we're going to have a nice home screen. We're going to have full-on telemetry. It's very slick. I'll have this link in GitHub in the show description. So you're going to go to this link. We're going to go down to releases, click on latest. Here's the OFS3 dashboard, release 3.0.0. It's the latest. And then you're going to download the zip file on your computer. So this is OMP. I have a Microsoft-based computer. So I am going to download OMP OFS3 Dashboard 3.0.0 English zip. So go ahead and download that. Once that's downloaded, here's the folder up here. I'm going to click on it. Scripts, OFS3. I'm going to copy that folder. And now we're going to go to the radio E. And that folder should have popped up earlier. So you can open up your file explorer. Make sure you're on radio E. So we're on radio E. And you should have a folder labeled scripts. If you don't have a folder labeled scripts, then create a new folder and rename it scripts. And then you're going to click on scripts. You can see I have a whole bunch of Luas in here. And then you're just going to copy and paste OFS3, which I have highlighted right here. Okay, yeah, so you can turn on your radio, and this is on my OMP M2 V3 Pro. Not a big deal. We're just going to do some basic background stuff to make sure you're set up for success with this helicopter. I'm going to click on the system scroll wheel, and I'm going to go to hardware. And then I want to make sure the analog filters is turned off. You don't want to use analog filter with gyro controlled airframes. So I just disable it globally here. If you haven't done your stick calibration yet, then you'd want to do that here. I've already done it, so I'm going to skip that step. This is an easy wizard to calibrate your sticks, your knobs and sliders. So we're going to go back. Nothing to do on that page. You can see since I installed the Lua in the scripts folder, the OFS3 dashboard that Rob Thompson created, we can see we have OFS3 logs here in the system menu. And then next we're going to go to model. Okay, now the fun part, it's time to create a new model in our transmitter for the OMP M2. So you can just go to the model menu, click on model select, and then you can click on plus, create model, and we're going to select helicopter, page over, flybarless, page over. Those default channel assignments are fine, page over, and then you can name it whatever you want. I'll just name mine test. Actually, I'll name it OMP M2 Sport. Picture, you don't need a picture. I get all my pictures and put them in my radio E file. I think it's under the bitmap folder. Sky Raccoon is a great website. They pretty much have every model out there, airplanes and helicopters, and it's already converted into a compatible picture to put on your radio. So here's an old picture from Sky Raccoon. I'll select that, page over. There we go, and we just created a new model, and there is our default screen. Let's make sure we're back in the model menu. Now we're gonna create our mixes. We're gonna create a free mix, and then we have to edit a couple mixes. So we created the model. I'm gonna go all the way over to mixes, And we're going to make sure they're all in the right channel assignment and the correct source. Ailerons, channels 1, source aileron, that's perfect. Elevators, channel 2, source elevator, that's perfect. Throttle, channel 3, but the source, I'm going to change that to maximum. That's the way I do it. It works pretty good. So I'm just going to select throttle and edit. Input, I'm going to change that to maximum. So you have to scroll down to special and then maximum. And there we go. Trim default is fine. Low position trim off. Throttle cut. This is my safety switch. So I'd like this for me to be my safety switch. So towards me would be throttle cut or motor off or safety on, whatever you want to call it. And away from me would allow the motor to run. I'm also going to have a throttle hold switch we're going to assign next over here. So I just have 2 motor off switches, that's all. Okay, so we just changed the input to maximum. Throttle cut, active condition. So I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to move the switch towards the position I want throttle cut. So that position I'm happy with. Click outside the window. And then I'm going to change this trigger value to plus 100%. This is the default values is kind of designed for airplanes with a linear throttle curve, but we're not using a linear throttle curve on the M2. We're going to be using governed head speeds in banks 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to change that to 10%, and I'm going to go to 100%. So trigger value 100, idle output value minus 100. Throttle hold, you definitely want throttle hold, and it doesn't matter what switch you put it on. I like to put it on switch SG. So when I pull this switch towards me, that's throttle hold. So it just recognized the position. I'll click outside the window. Value minus 100%. So that means when I'm throttle hold, the output's going to be minus 100 in the motor or the throttle curve. All right, so let's test this out. So we have our output 1 to channel 3. It should already be like that, but make sure it is. And then here we can see our signal. So right now, if I get throttle hold off, it still says minus 100 because my throttle cut is on. Now if I get throttle cut off for my safety switch, now you can see I'm at 100% output. Throttle hold, minus 100. Throttle cut, minus 100. Okay, so we just got our throttle set up in the mixer page. Rudders needed to be on channels 4 and source rudder, so that's correct. You can see it moving on the graph. Pitch, so this is your pitch or collective, and that needs to be channel 6. We need to add channel 5. Channel 5 is going to be our attitude 3D switch. So it needs to be at least a 2-position switch or 3D rescue switch. For my son, I'm going to set up an attitude 3D switch so he can fly in beginner mode. Attitude mode is kind of like beginner mode. So when that's on or engaged, it's just going to limit the roll to 45 degrees and the pitch to 45 degrees. That way you can avoid some awkward orientations like knife edge or inverted. So we need to create a new mix. So I'm gonna hit the plus symbol. And you can see this is taking me to the mixes library. I select free mix. And I want it after rudders because rudders was channel 4. So I want it in sequential order just because I'm a nerd. There's our free mix we just created. Pretty easy, but I'm gonna rename it. So I'm gonna delete it. And I'm just gonna name it attitude dash 3D. Or you can name it 3D rescue switch, and I'll show you guys how to do that after I show you how to do the attitude 3D switch. Active condition, always on. Source. So this is where I want to assign it to a switch. So I want to use this switch, SA, as my attitude 3D switch. So I want towards me would be attitude mode, and then away from me would be 3D mode. You can see it doesn't recognize the position, it just recognizes the switch, which is fine. Operation add, actions always on wait 100%, that's correct. And now you see we have to, the output 1, we need to assign that to channel 5. So I'll just tap on that. We're gonna go to channel 5 and select, and I want to rename it, so I'm gonna click yes. There you go. So I just assigned the attitude 3D to this switch, so we can see it in action here. So that's 3D mode minus 100, and that would be attitude mode, which is that beginner mode. Now, if you wanted, in the OMPHOBBY app, which we're gonna get into later, you have the option of enabling rescue. And when you enable rescue, you no longer have attitude mode or that beginner mode. So you're either gonna have 3D mode or rescue mode. So you probably wanna assign that to a 2-position momentary switch, such as switch SH on my X18. So when I pull that towards me, that's rescue. So if I wanna bail out of a maneuver because I'm about to crash, I just flick it, let go, and then it should rescue. And then this position here, its natural position is 3D mode. So if you did want to change that, you just select source and then move the 2-position momentary switch that you want for rescue. Okay, so we'll just double check this to make sure it's set up correct, and it sure is. All right, we're gonna go back. Okay, so attitude 3D, there's our new mix. Channel 5, source SA, correct. Pitch, we already talked about. Pitch needs to be on channel 6, and the source is throttle. Bank, okay, you can see bank needs to be channel 7, according to the OMP M2 manual, or the OFS3 manual. But you can see the source is dashed out, so we need to correct that. So I'm gonna click on bank 7, and I'm gonna edit, always on. Now input. So the bank switch, you're gonna have 3 banks, and in your OMPHOBBY app, you can select what RPM you want for bank 1, what RPM you want for bank 2, and what RPM for bank 3. I like to assign my banks to switch SE. So I'm just gonna move this switch, and it automatically recognized what switch I moved. I'm gonna click outside the window. So, and then we're gonna move down. We don't need a curve, channel count 1, wait 1, and output needs to be on channel 7. So that's all correct. And then we can test it. I'm sorry, wrong switch. So minus 100 is bank 1. 0% is bank 2. And plus 100% is bank 3. Okay, so that's what your mixes screen should look like. And we'll have a nice flying model and everything's gonna work correct. So let's move on. Okay, now that we created our mixes, we're gonna go to outputs. You can go to this page and just see if all your analog sticks are moving correctly. Pitch, elevator, aileron, throttle. There's plus 100%, your bank switch, and your pitch, your collective. So they're all moving appropriately. So I'll just go back out. Nothing you need to do in outputs. It's just to make sure you set up your mixes correctly. Timers, I don't set a timer because we were going to have telemetry, milliamps consumed. The Rob Thompson widget works great when it says low battery and I land. The battery's red at 30% every time. Trims, you don't have to go in here, but I do. You want to change the mode to off for rudder, elevator, throttle, and aileron. So I think the default is easy mode, so just click on it and select off. That way, if you accidentally move a trim, aileron or rudder or elevator trim, your helicopter is going to start drifting and you're going to wonder what the heck's going on. So I just disable those trims. RF system. We can see there's my registration ID. Internal module, you're going to click on that and you're going to turn it on. And then you're going to make sure you're on access/access D16. There's my model ID. Channel range. The default is channels 1 through 16. We only need 8 channels. Actually, I think we only need 7. So I changed this from 16 to 8. That way there's less packets, which means less or lower latency, which is good. Racing mode we can't do with the RS Mini, so that's off or dashed out. 2.4G FSK is on. Protocol needs to be access. And now it's time to register and bind our RS Mini. Okay, before we register and bind our receiver, we have to kind of make our own cable. It's not too bad, so don't worry. We need to make a new cable. This plugs into the RS Mini, and this plugs into the OFS3 unit. So this is the cable that comes with the RS Mini. There used to be a blue wire coming out where the yellow wire is. So you need to just completely remove the blue wire on the receiver end connector. And to depin, I just use an X-Acto knife, and there's a little tab under there, and you're just going to get the tip of the X-Acto knife and gently lift up on the tab and pull that old blue wire out. And then you're going to depin the yellow wire where it was originally, and you're going to simply move the yellow wire over to where the blue wire was. So you're depinning the blue, getting rid of it, you don't need it, and then depin the yellow, and then move the yellow here. So this is what the connector should look like on the receiver end. And just a note, when you're putting the pins back in, you want to make sure the flat part of the little connector is facing the tab. You'll see like just a little notch. That way it locks. So you can see my connector's nice and stout, and it's everything's fastened correctly. The cable that comes with the kit that has a bunch of just bare wires coming out of it, you need to depin all those wires. So this is the connector that had all the bare wires coming out of it. So you just want to depin all those bare wires from that connector that came in the box, and you can just get rid of those wires. We don't need them. And then you need to move the black to this position here, which is the ground. The red needs to go to plus 5 volts, which is the second position from the bottom. This third pin needs nothing. No cable going into this third hole or third pin. We don't need it here. And then the yellow pin is going to go on the very top of the connector here. So this is the OFS3 side, and this is what your cable layout needs to look like. Otherwise, your model's not going to work. So that's what it looks like on the OFS3 side. And this is what it looks like on the receiver side. And once you get your cable built, you know, it should look like that. We're going to plug in the receiver end into our RS Mini. So the little holes go up top. We're just going to slide it in there until it's seated. And then we're going to plug in this connector into the OFS3 on our M2. So it's going to go into this port here. So just make sure you line it up correctly. And you're just going to gently kind of push it in. I like to use my fingernails. Try not to damage the wires. And you can see it's seated correctly. And I'll just show you again the layout of the cables. So black goes to ground, red goes to plus 5 volts. Nothing goes into the RX, and then the yellow goes into the TX. Okay, now we can register and bind. So let's register our RS Mini first to our transmitter. So there's this little button on the top of the RS Mini. I'm just going to push and hold that and plug in the battery. And then you can let go of the button, and now you have an LED light on. We're going to go to register in the RF system menu.
Register.
And there it is. It just showed up. My registration ID, receiver name RS Mini, and the UID is
Register.
0. So I'm going to register. Registration okay. And then I'm going to unplug the battery now. And now we're going to bind. I'm going to click on RX1, receiver 1,
Bind.
and then plug the battery back into the model. You can see RS Mini showed up. Select device RS Mini.
Telemetry recovered.
Bind OK. Now we need to change some options in the RS Mini settings. So click on RS Mini again, and then click on Options. I want to turn high PWM speed on.
VFR low warning.
Telemetry port, the manual says it needs to be changed to F port.
VFR
Bus
low
invert needs to be selected on. I'll just use my finger.
warning. VFR low warning.
And then S bus 16. Okay, we can get out of that menu there. And let's just do a quick flight control check. Back elevator, forward elevator, right roll, left roll. Rudder doesn't work unless the motor's on. And collective up, collective down. I'll test the motor real quick, make sure your blades are disconnected. These things are dangerous. You know, they can cut you up pretty good because they're sharp blades and they spin fast. So throttle cut off, motor on. There we go. So everything works good. Throttle hold on, throttle cut is on. Change your failsafe to hold. I can't remember what the default is, but change it to hold. That way, if you have a signal loss in flight, the servos just pretty much stay in the position they were previously in, okay? And let's move to the next page. Telemetry. I'm just gonna delete all. So this is what your screen should look like on your telemetry page. We're gonna discover new sensors and leave it on for about a minute. It takes a while for it to discover all the sensors coming from your new M2 Sport or M2 Pro or M1 Pro. And here's all our telemetry. You see the white dots? That means it's sending and receiving telemetry. So we're looking good there. So I think it's discovered all the sensors, so I'm gonna get that back off. Let's go back and checklist. I don't need logic switches. I don't need special functions. This is where you can add a special function and assign an audio for each switch position if you choose so. I'll do that later. There's some good YouTube videos on special functions out there, but I'm not going to go into that just to keep the video a little shorter. Curves, we don't need to do anything. VARs, nothing. Trainer, nothing. Lua, nothing. Okay, so the model menu is pretty much set up. Now, these receivers, like this RS Mini, who knows how long they've been sitting in the factory, and firmware updates come out on them every once in a while. So we need to go to System, next page, Info, and we're going to scroll down and see what the RS Mini Receiver 1 firmware is. Now, if I remember correctly, that file we installed in the firmware folder earlier on our flash drive, radio file D, was 3.0.1. So it looks like the firmware on this RS Mini is out of date. So I'll quickly show you how to update the firmware on the RS Mini. So I'm going to click Return. Let's go to next page. We're going to go to File Manager. And I installed that firmware on my flash drive, which was the D folder, if you remember earlier. I'm going to click on Firmware, click it again, and I see Archer Plus RS Mini 3.0.1. So that's the file I manually put in my folder. I'm going to select that, select it again, and I want the newer FrSky radios is pretty slick. You can update the firmware on these receivers over the air. That's what OTA means. So I'm going to flash receiver by internal over the air. But first, we need to unplug the model. And then I'm going to click flash.
Telemetry lost.
I'm going to click on flash
None.
internal receiver over the air. And then I'm going to plug the battery in. Select device. I'm going to select RS Mini. Current version's 1.0.9.
Nine.
Yes. And there you go. Now it's flashing new firmware on your RS Mini over the air. Okay, get your little Bluetooth transmitter out, because now we're going to install the app, the OMP app on our phone. And then we're going to plug in this Bluetooth transmitter into the OFS3 unit, and we'll plug it in. So I'll show you what the app looks like. You're just going to, the app's called OMPHOBBY. It's this guy right there. It says, the sky is calling. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and open that up for now. And there it is. There's all the models the app can connect to. Let's go ahead and plug in our Bluetooth transmitter, receiver into the OFS3 unit. And then let's plug our model in. My transmitter's off right now. You don't need your transmitter on. Okay, when I plugged in the battery, I got this prompt here. Devices found, M2A3524, connect or not. I'm going to click OK. Okay, there we go. Now I want to make sure this OFS3 has the most recent firmware and the Bluetooth has the most recent firmware. We're back on this home screen. Click on About. Click on Bluetooth firmware upgrade. Do you want to upgrade now? Okay. Okay, so it just upgraded the Bluetooth firmware successfully. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click on About. So now this is that original screen we had. I want to make sure I'm on the right flight control firmware upgrade. So I'm going to click on that. Do you want to upgrade now? Okay. As you can see, we don't have the folder or the file, the firmware file. We have to manually download the most recent firmware file onto our iPhone. So to get that firmware for the OFS3 on our iPhone, let's click About Us. And this is taking us to the OMPHOBBY website. I'm going to hit the hamburger symbol. And I'm going to go to tech support. firmware download. And then you need to pay attention, make sure you download the right firmware. So here's the Langu M2 V3 Sport 1520 firmware. So I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to download. Download. I downloaded the correct firmware onto my iPhone here. So I'm back in the OMP app on the About page. And I'm going to click on Flight Control Firmware Upgrade. Do you want to upgrade now? Okay. And then it opens up my files, and you can see here's the Langu M2 V3 Sport, because I have the M2 V3 Sport. I'm going to click on that, and now it's upgrading flight controller firmware. Okay, so I flashed the firmware successfully on the OFS3. It took a couple minutes. I'm back in the OMPHOBBY app, and we're just going to browse through each section. Go to settings. It's connecting via Bluetooth right now. We're on the start page. Here's all your gains. You can change your rotation rate for pitch, roll, and yaw to your liking. So if you're a beginner, you probably want to tame pitch, roll, and yaw down. Feed forward, I probably wouldn't play with that at this point. And here's where you can set your expo. I'm a 30% on pitch and roll, and I'm a 40% on yaw guy. I'll change that later. And let's see, let's go to advanced settings or base configuration. And here's your mechanical setup of the servos. You may want to take a picture just in case this thing resets for some reason. And then you can reset your servos to where they're level. The helicopter is fully set up and flies great right out of the box. You can set your max collective and min collective here. I don't play around with cyclic ring here. Static calibration. You probably want to do this. So you want to make sure this OFS3 unit is completely level. And then hit static calibration and save it. Okay. That way, when you're in that attitude mode, that beginner mode, it's going to hover close to level for you. Reset OFS3. I wouldn't push that unless you bricked your unit or something. Format OFS3, I'm not going to do. And then here's servo limits. I'm just going to leave those. No need to change those. Let's go back. Advanced settings. Right now, we're in expert parameter settings. So these are your PIDs, your rotation rates. I find the gains, I haven't had to touch them at all. And I fly in the Denver area where typically I need the gains higher than a sea level pilot. But the gains are just spot on, I think. So I don't even touch the gains, just the rates and the expo. If we go down at the bottom here, software throttle. This is where you're going to set the different RPMs in your 3 banks. So low would be bank 1. The middle position of your bank switch would be medium, and high at 85. That looks good for my son right now. But if you want higher RPMs or lower RPMs in your different banks, this is where you're going to change it, and then you can send it and save it. All right, let's go to receiver and telemetry. This option here is if you're using like a radio master type radio, or you're using ELRS. I'm not using ELRS, so I have this off. Battery capacity, 750, that's what I want. S-bus range, we're going to leave that wide. V-bar control telemetry, we're going to leave that disabled. And then we got this new feature, experimental features. So this is basically a bailout switch or a rescue switch. So you can enable rescue mode if you want, and then save it. And then what I would do is I'd go back to the mixer page on your radio. And if you remember, my Attitude 3D switch is this one here. I'd probably, so with the rescue mode enabled, you'd probably want to move it to a 2-position switch, such as this right rear one, where it's spring loaded. So that's one position, and then that's a momentary switch. And then you could just change the attitude 3D free mix that you created. So that would be rescue, and that would be 3D mode. Okay, one of the final steps. We're almost there, guys. So thanks for hanging in there. This is that default home screen that we have. I want to change this to that OFS3 dashboard that Rob Thompson created. If you remember, we moved that folder into the Radio E drive, and it was, I think the name of the file was OFS3, and that went into the scripts folder. So Radio E, scripts folder, and then in that scripts folder should be OFS3. So we're going to change this home screen to Rob Thompson's Slick widget. So I just double tap the screen. I'm going to select configure widget, and widget, right now it's bitmap. I'm going to go all the way down to OFS3 dashboard. We're going to select that. Then you can see cell count 3S, capacity 750 milliamp hours, and that's correct. That matches the batteries I have. I'm going to go back to widget, and then I'm going to click on screen 1, and we need to change the layout of the screen. Right now I think it's this screen right there, but we need to scroll down to full screen in order for the widget to function properly. Okay, so we just selected full screen. I'm gonna hit return, and there you go. Pretty slick dashboard. You can see now we'll have telemetry on head speed, how much fuel remaining. This battery's depleted, so I think there's 30%, which means 0. And then that's the voltage of the pack, profile 1, flight count, timer, and then here's your signal strength. And then when you finish the flight, it gives you a little post-flight menu, which is pretty slick. All right, it's time to wrap up the video. Thanks for watching. I'll just do a quick clip on wire management. Not that this helicopter really needs complicated wire management. You can see I put the RS Mini up on top of the OFS3 unit. I did put some clear heat shrink around it, and then there's some double-sided tape to plop it down, secured on the OFS3. This is how I did it on my M2 Pro, and it hasn't come loose at all. And then I just put a little heat shrink around this extra cable coming out of the RS Mini, and then use a little double-sided tape to secure it on the side. Bluetooth module, double-sided tape on the side of the airframe here. And the way I did this wiring, the canopy goes on and off easily with plenty of space, so there'll be no binding if you just do a simple wiring job kind of like this. You don't have to have the Bluetooth permanently installed like I do. I like it permanently installed because I like to monkey around in that OMPHOBBY app. It's pretty slick. I do have the tail blades back on. I cleaned off the bolts, and then I put just a little dab of blue Loctite into the threading in the motor, just a little bit. You don't want to get that Loctite in the plastic. And snug these 2 screws for the tail rotor, not too tight, otherwise you may break the plastic. And then basically the main blades, you want them as loose as possible. Right now they're a little bit stiff because they're new. I have the screws as loose as possible, but if you find your helicopter has a vibration in flight, it's probably your main rotor blades are too tight in the blade grips. Anyways, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in Small's Heli Hut.